I think that your experience, you want to be careful about generalizing your experience, but I hope you go back into the classroom and be better with discipline. Look, discipline is, for those of you who are teachers, I'm going to speak to you again one more minute about discipline. The fact is that discipline, like anything else, discipline is something that, and classroom management, you know, we obsess about it in colleges of education, we obsess about it in the classroom, and I think we approach it from a very wrong-headed place. I'll give you an example. There's a 5th grade teacher in Chicago I know named John Wilson, and I love this guy. And he begins every class, every year, he begins by having his kids gather around. These are 10-year-olds. And he says, I want to talk to you about the summer, I want to talk about the plans for the year. And then he says, after they talk for a bit, he says, now I want to talk about the rules of the classroom. And all the 10-year-old ears perk up, because when rules are discussed, you want to know where the blow is coming from, and you pay attention. What are the rules? Mr. Wilson says, the first rule is you can wear your hat. Holy cow, the 10-year-old kids are like, really? I can wear my hat? Wow, Mr. Wilson is so cool. You're wearing a hat, you're not having any problem, you're wearing a hat, it's all good. Number 2, rule number 2, you can chew gum. And the kids are like, man, Mr. Wilson is a rebel. He's a radical. He's crazy. We can chew gum. And then there's the 3rd rule. The 3rd rule is this is a learning environment, and we must respect one another and one another's work. Whatever else we do, respect is key. Now, what has Wilson done by doing that? He's created a standard by which any misbehavior can become a point of conversation and a point of discussion and a point of learning, a teachable moment, if you will. And that is a very smart way to do discipline. That means that somebody makes a racial crack, somebody swears at the teacher, all these things become the time to talk and figure it out. The hidden curriculum of that classroom is we are learning to live together. That's a good lesson. It's a lesson that many of us didn't learn all that well. When I teach graduate school, I also teach learning to live together. Some people talk too much, some not enough, and so on. Right down the road from Mr. Wilson's classroom is a school where I went to visit, City of Chicago, and there's a big sign in the cafeteria with, it's kind of an aging painting, and it says, cafeteria rules. Number 1, no running. Number 2, no yelling. Number 3, no fork fights. No fork fights? And you wonder what horrible thing happened in 1952 to make the fork fight. Nothing about gun fights or fist fights. But that way of doing things, the rules with the punishments, is destined to fail. Whereas I think the notion of teachable moments is a much more robust and serious way to think about this.
I'm a teacher.
I know
Could I?
Calm down. Give it back. Keep partying down. Go ahead. I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Have you ever tried to deliver a lecture to a room full of 30 students?
Can somebody repeat that?
Have you ever tried to deliver lectures to a room full of 30 students and
Chewing gum, all chewing gum, I think that's all chewing gum.
all chewing
All
gum?
chewing gum.
Yeah, it's no problem.
Yeah, I wouldn't think it would be.
Even eating is not a problem. You can actually, you've done this with your friends. You sat around and had food and also a conversation can be done.
First of all, I was a guidance counselor in Little Haiti for 2 years. And I had parents, Little Haiti's in Miami, by the way. I had parents and students crying their 5th grade year to make sure that their students could get into the charter schools in the district, despite the fact, because the charter schools were higher performing, despite the fact that the public educational expenditures were higher. So I guess I'm just trying to understand exactly what your solutions are, because in the same breath you said you're anti-government, but then you're also anti-privatization. So I don't understand what your solutions are specifically for the African American community, where you know, whatever you were saying earlier about how we're not able to compete, those numbers are even more stark in the Black community. So again, you said you're anti-government and you're also anti-privatization. So what are your solutions?
Well, you know, the thing what we need to do is we need to invest more in the public schools.
No.
You're saying that
Pupil expenditures are higher in the inner cities, but we're still not getting the results.
and here's the truth about the charter schools. Here's the truth about the charter schools, and it's all the research, and you can find it. They select their students, and they're not doing better. So you look at the Stanford study from this year about charter schools, they are not doing better.
But the
But
schools
here's the
I send
problem,
my
look,
students to
here's the
work with
problem.
better.
If you say to me in Chicago, and a parent will say, I would like to get a good education for my kids. I notice that there's a military school over here, and they seem to be doing better. I'll choose the military school. I don't want the military school, but it's the only chance I have. I'm sympathetic to people who feel that their chances and their choices are narrow. Why can't we allow broader choices and keep these things in the public domain? Why are we privatizing schools? Why are we privatizing the fire department?
But
I think
when they're showing results for kids who look like me.
they're not showing results.
They are showing results.
No, they're not showing results.
Let her
I
talk.
sent my students to charter schools where they were able to compete.
Look,
And
Arnie
if they went to the
Duncan,
public
listen,
school,
let me
they
just
would've
tell you
been
this,
able to
and we can check it out, but Arnie Duncan has gone to Washington DC, famous for turning around Chicago failing schools, correct? And you remember Rod, what was his name in the Bush administration? Secretary of Education, Rod Page. Rod Page went to Washington with the Texas Miracle, remember? And the Texas Miracle was he had shown us how to do these public schools, right? And what was the outcome? 2 years later, somebody actually investigated and found that it was complete fraud. They were testing different kids. They were pushing kids away who tested poorly. So Arnie Duncan is famous for turning around a couple of Chicago high schools, correct? One of the high schools he turned around is Orr High School. And here's the reality in Orr High School. They're testing different kids than they start off with. So they say 100% to college. You said 100% to college, except they push out 50% of the kids. So it's a fraud. And it's a fraud you want to look into before you invest too much in it. You ought to look into what the problems are and how they manifest themselves. There are a couple of people here who were principals in the New York City school system who created unbelievably successful schools. How did they do that? Well, and they did it with ordinary kids. And they did it by creating an environment that was safe, an environment that was accepting, an environment that was challenging as well as nourishing, and they worked closely with the parents. They were small schools in which every kid was known well by a parent adult. If you can manage that, and you can manage that in the public system, there's no reason to say, well, the private works better. There is no evidence that
I guess I'm confused. Can I ask a question, please? Can I ask a question? Okay, thank you. I didn't ask a question yet, sir.
You probably succeeded beyond your wildest imagination. And listening to you tonight, what I'm hearing from you is that you have to question authority.
Exactly.
And the boundaries are any boundary can be broken down. What I would suggest to you is that as a result of this philosophy, you've created a generation of children who can't sit in a classroom because they're busy questioning authority. The teacher is an authority figure, just as the government is an authority figure. Excuse me, I'm speaking now, thank you. And that's the reason why my wife is a teacher for about 35 years. That's the reason she taught prior in parochial school and now in public school. That is the reason why the society is falling apart.
You're not robots.
Okay, I guess, Mr. Ayers, I'm confused, and pardon me, but I am a teacher. I'm currently teaching. I've taught for quite a long time. I've also been a parent. I've also been a member of a board of education for 9 years, so I kind of have a unique perspective. I've seen education from a lot of different angles, and I'm a current practicing educator. And I agree with you that our schools are failing our children in the United States of America. We've all read the studies. We come up at the bottom of the heap among all the developed countries. But my problem is this. The system that you are saying can fix the problem has been creating the problem, in my opinion, for many, many years. In New Jersey, and perhaps you're not too familiar with what goes on in New Jersey, I'll give you just a thumbnail of what's going on in New Jersey. In New Jersey, the Abbott districts that's our court decision for the failing urban districts. In Newark, it costs $30,000 a student to educate. In some of the suburban areas, it costs half that price. So if money fixes the problem, then why are all the urban schools failing? And after decades of this going on in New Jersey, and I have a film for you to watch too, which is, if you haven't seen it, it's called The Cartel. And it's about New Jersey schools. And there are parents on there who are crying because there is a lottery to get their child in a charter school. And so after decades of failing schools and declining test scores, what the current governor is trying to do in New Jersey is to create some charter schools. There is a Scholarship Opportunity Act that would give money to parents. We talked about parents getting right to choose where their kids go. So the money would go to the parents. The parents could take that money and go back to the failing urban school if they wanted to. But I doubt they're going to do that. They're going to take that voucher and they're going to take it to a parochial school or a private school or one of those small schools you're talking about with small classes and control over the teaching environment and creativity, because the state of New Jersey has realized that we are at the end. We cannot spend any more money. We are totally bankrupt. Like a lot of the states across this nation, we are about to go bankrupt. We cannot spend any more money. And as a teacher, I fully agree that money isn't going to solve it. So, but it is not this current administration that is favoring any creativity. I'm going to finish. Just let me finish, and you can answer me. My point is that it is not this current administration in either. Let me finish, please. It is not this current administration in Washington, and it's not to get political, but it's not the Democrats who favor those alternate schools. It is the conservatives who want to see the failing urban schools closed down. And for those who think that conservatives are racist, a lot of us say we need to fix the problems of the urban schools so those children, many of them not white, many of them can go other places and get a quality education like those of us in the suburbs do.
Yeah.
Failure in the schools is selective, there's no question. And you pointed out that the city schools and the schools of the poor are failing. And you said that sometimes they spend so much and that money doesn't fix it. So why do they keep failing?
Well, it has to do with unions a lot, I think.
Here's the question.
Something about the system doesn't work. Something about the system doesn't work. If you don't think it's the unions, what is it about the system that's failing our kids?
Let me answer.
Listen,
Order.
I suggested that poverty was part of it, and when you point to places like Finland, where you have universal health care, full employment, and no homeless people, that is something we could aspire to. Universal health care, full employment, and no homeless people. But let me just say this. School failure in the United States is selective, there's no question. And in your voucher plan,
It's not mine, sir.
well, let's imagine your voucher plan. First of all, I agree with you that the conservatives are the ones who want to close down the public space. There's no question about it. And I put Obama and Duncan absolutely in the conservative camp in terms of wanting to close down the public schools. George Bush and Margaret Spelling's policies on education are identical to the Obama-Duncan. And I don't know what you guys are reading that make you think that's not true. They're worse in many ways than the Bush administration policies from my perspective.
Did you realize that before 1865, most children in America were educated in private schools? Before the Civil War, most children in America were educated in private schools. The public school system we have now came about after that.
That's part of that history we've forgotten.
You're actually true. It's actually true. I will. I just want to say one other
for it, just to let you know.
Calm down, calm down.
One other thing on this question of vouchers. In the voucher
Subsidized by the state.
there are two things guaranteed. You say they ought to take the money and go. One is, are you going to actually give them $40,000 per parent? Because if
No.
you're giving them $40,000, then I don't know where that's going to come from.
No, it's about 10.
Well, 10 is not what, the best, so.
But it's a third of what it costs in Newark.
And I think it's gonna be, horribly low. But number two, if I'm on the south side of Chicago and I get your $10,000 or $40,000 voucher, am I allowed to go to Winnetka on the far north side and enroll in that school and you'll let me in? I am allowed to go there and you'll get me there?
In New Jersey, you could go wherever you choose, any place that will accept you.
Yes. Yes.
You can go anywhere you choose as long as they accept
The
you.
most privileged school
Yes.
in New Jersey is I could go there and those parents would let me in.
Yes.
The school will accept you.
Mr. Ayers.
Yeah, but if there's a seat, it's a big question. Yes, ma'am, yellow. Hooray. Oh,
Okay.
well, listen, over here, yes.
It seems like the people on the right side of the room really want to blame.
That's the left side of the room.
Great college education.
They really want to blame, the unions and the teachers and all that for the failing school system for everything. Whereas we want to blame the failing school system on everything. It seems like, it's poverty, it's this and that.
Poverty is not this and that, it's
Right,
actually a
right.
real
I
thing.
understand these are problems, but these are problems that are massive and bigger than the education problem and aren't going to get solved overnight. And there's not much that you can do about it.
That's not true. And that's why
In
I
reality,
said,
there's not much you can do about it. I went to Catholic school for 2 years. When I went back to public school, I was miles ahead of everybody in the public school.
what you saying.
So,
Catholic schools.
but it's kind of disappointing to everybody for themselves. If my parents can get me into a better school and get me, get me further ahead in life,
We're back to
that to the other people.
Right, go back to the policy, choose the right parents and you'll do very well. If you choose the wrong parents, you're in real trouble. That's not public policy.
Oh, my
Number
God.
one. Number two, when I said the point about poverty, I didn't say it will be solved overnight. I said leaving it off the table, assuming that all we need to do to make things better is to have a voucher or fire a teacher is insane. We ought to say that we have a serious commitment, which we did say in this country 40 years ago, didn't live up to it, but said it. We have a serious commitment to ending poverty in our lifetime. It could be done. Now, it's not something that can be done in a minute, but it's an aspiration. And it's something we positive as a value. And to say, I'm sorry that it's every person
If my mom
comes
had
up.
drank when I was a baby.
Son?
If my mom had drank when I was a baby, I would have been retarded. I would have come out retarded. And it would have felt great. But that's life.
That's right, that's right.
And I think that's really.
Did she drink?
Whatever happened to the kid, it's not our fault. It has a terrible mother, that's the kid's fault. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let's talk some real statistics here. In Newark, 20% of the students at any given time are homeless, which means that they sleep on the floor in a relative's house, at a friend's house, or maybe even in a car and on the street. Let's talk Abbott decision. It was originally filed in the 1980s because of decades of underfunding based upon a New Jersey funding formula that benefited wealthier suburban districts than the poorer urban and rural districts. Is that $30,000? That's not repeated spending. It's actually $16,000. That's a lie that Christine's been telling for months and months. Finally, we can look at the reports coming out of the Economic Policy Institute that say the new teacher evaluation methods don't work and aren't valid from year A to year B. And oh yeah, the Creator Report says that on the whole, charter schools do no better than their public or private counterparts. And actually, a large percentage of them actually do worse. Let's actually talk facts and not things we make up in our I get pushed in the head waiting to see somebody talk.
roughly students, we get 6 or 7 a year. The fact is that so much of public policy debate is fact-free and debate-based, and I appreciate you bringing facts and evidence to the room.
Hey,
Look them up! Stand up, please. Stand up, please.
Like to talk a little bit of facts. In the New York City school system, there's approximately 4,000 teachers sitting in what they call rubber rooms. They've been accused of abuse and whatnot. They cannot be fired.
That's not true.
Well, they're not fired.
That's because administrators are not taking their paperwork.
Oh, that's bullcrap. Come on.
They don't report, they don't do that, they don't take their records. It's the same thing that happens in the districts across the state. The administrators, department chairs and principals are responsible for evaluating teachers. Administrators are a separate unit in New York State than they are teachers. Principals are not teachers.
Hey, Billy, ask him a question now. He's not part of that conversation.
That are sitting in these rubber rooms, okay? But the point being is that they're getting their pension and they're getting their health and they're sick. So then you have all these other people in the school system. And now,
Yeah, okay, yeah.